First of all, the Uganda government, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, has made a robust, extensive response to each point by point, which I would not want to dwell on because we have already circulated to the media. EU is a partner organization, international organization. We hold with them diplomatic relations. Our relation has been good. I may even describe it as excellent. We have had no issues, real issues. But this resolution coming as is was a surprise to us because the EU has ambassadors here, there's EU delegation here, and each of the member countries of EU has bilateral mission, diplomatic mission with us. They never raised these concerns with the government of Uganda, and perhaps we did not respond to them satisfactorily. They didn't. Secondly, as a matter of fact and on record, in particular matter of the elections, the EU did observe elections. They wrote to the government of Uganda saying because of COVID, they are not going to send the usual election observers coming from Europe. Their missions here will have teams to observe the election. Indeed, they sent 56 names, which were all accredited. Under what they call Election Diplomatic Watch. And they indicated which areas of the country they would visit. They indeed visited, and they issued a statement. That statement, in short, they said the election was credible. Particularly the polling day, they said it was peaceful. It has never been as peaceful as that election. That's what they said themselves. So it was a surprise to us that they entertained this in their parliament. But be that as it may, even assuming somebody complained or raised, they never informed our embassy in Brussels that there was a complaint so that we would respond. We only saw the resolution. We are still trying to understand the motivation for the resolution tainted with the clear falsehood and the mix-up of issues. For example, they raised the issue of violence in the electoral process. They mix it up with issues of homosexuals, who they claim have hostels in Uganda. As the government of Uganda, we are not aware of any hostels for homosexuals at all. They mix that up with the arrest and prosecution of one Nicholas Opio, as if this country does not have laws. Our response really is, Uganda is a democracy. We abide by the rule of law. When there is an election, the laws of Uganda don't get suspended. And therefore, anybody who is suspected to have committed, about to commit, will be either arrested, will be curtailed to prevent further commission and breach of the law. So that's what has taken place in Uganda. In the instant case of infraction with some presidential candidates, specifically they mentioned Chagulanyi, they mentioned Amure Toboy. We have responded to them and said, first of all, we held this election under the COVID-19 pandemic, where there is high restriction, not just in Uganda, all over the world. They themselves have locked their countries. Nobody can go to their countries. Nobody can leave their countries and move elsewhere. And therefore, we developed SOPs, which the Ministry of Health issued, which also in turn the Electoral Commission circulated to all Uganda, not just candidates, among which no public rallies, no public procession, no gathering of more than 200. These two presidential candidates somehow falsely believe that because they are presidential candidates, the rules don't apply to them. But also, they had a background that for them, they are going to conduct this election through defiance. Under our laws, Nobody should defy the law. Nobody should defy law enforcement. And when they attempted to do so, law enforcement agencies responded to them. And we had expected that the EU ambassadors, both the EU and the different European ambassadors who reside here, understood this very well, because even them, I don't think any of them has even held a single party. None of them has held a single dinner. None of them has held a single cocktail party as they used to do because of COVID. So it surprises us when they make a restriction on presidential candidates an issue. So that's really our response. First of all, we don't arrest supporters of different political groups. We are arresting suspect criminals. If there's any supporter of a political party or a candidate who mingles with suspected criminals, then the onus is up to them to absolve them through the legal mechanisms in Uganda, which is, first of all, being arrested by a law enforcement agency. It could be the police, it could be the army. Where sufficient evidence to take you for court and they are charged, we have done so. Where investigations are still going on, we are still doing so, and we have informed the people in custody of government. But we think they do this for purposes of blackmail, to tag everybody as having been arrested because of political dissent. If we are arresting people because of political dissent, why are the arrests not in Tororo, not in Mbane, not in Arua, not in Acholi, not in Kasese, not in Mbarara? Why are the arrests concentrated in Kampala, where we all know any criminal vagabond would want to take advantage of the city life? Because I want to believe that opposition is present throughout the country. So if we were arresting supporters of opposition political parties and candidates, why we are not arresting people in Bunyoro? Why are we not arresting people in Mbane? Why in Kampala? Yes. So, but even if human rights abuse, the courts of law of Uganda are competent to try the government officials for abuse of human rights. It is not the official policy. This government has a track record of 25 years, even in war, where people died in the hands of government soldiers. We never once tried to hide the fact that some people have died. One of the greatest strengths of the NRM government, and President Museveni in particular, is admitting mistakes and being brave enough to correct them. And so no one can accuse this government of wanton abuse of human rights and not taking decisive action against human rights violators, be they police officers, be they soldiers, be they civilian leaders. We have a track record of being harsh at mistreatment, particularly of civilians. We are not known for harassing, for killing, for conducting political assassinations, never. To the contrary, this NRM government is full of previous dissenters, including those who had taken up arms to fight this government. Once they were convinced and they abandoned armed rebellion, Gen. Moses Sali is available, Honorable Musechwero is available, and many, many others, including in the police and in the army, in the OPDF, and in our intelligence services. The Deputy Director General of Internal Security Organization is General Taban Amin, who had waged 26 years of war in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So, but we think that part of the reason of this EU resolution is an imperial mentality, where they think that because they were colonizers, they have a superior moral ground to lecture, not just to Uganda, but to Africa and the rest of the world. I think being descendants of colonial people, many of these people still have hangover, that they have higher moral ground than blacks. It is something we have told them we're not going to accept. International relations is based on mutual respect. If they mutually respect Uganda, Uganda will respect them. In some of their own countries, can you assault a police officer on the streets of Britain? Can you assault a police officer on the street of Paris? Can you defy the law in Sweden? Even just littering the street. Can you litter the street in Brussels and you get away with it? How about these people who premeditated intimidation, harassment, and actual violence in the hope that they will prevent ordinary Ugandans from coming out on election day? So that they burned the city, they beat up people, they erected here illegal roadblock to rob people in broad daylight. We have not had a single statement from the EU or individual European ambassadors condemning the undressing of women, the broad daylight robbery on the streets, and so on and so forth. So part of this statement maybe is part of their usual interference in the political and electoral processes in African countries, with the view that they can install puppet regimes that can dictate, that they can dance to their tunes. If indeed they are respecting international diplomatic protocol, they would have written to the government of Uganda. But the fact that the resolution is tainted with the multiple layers of lies, falsehoods, tells a lot about their main intention for this resolution. However much they tell the lies, they will not go so far, because we don't hold our elections, we don't run our affairs to please foreigners. We hold our election and run our affairs on the basis, legitimate interests of the citizens of Uganda, the majority of whom know the quality of governance in Uganda. And that's the reason why they have consistently returned President Yoweri Museveni and NRM. Not just Yoweri Museveni, the president. Why are they not referring to parliamentary elections, which was held on the same day? That massive win of the NRM at 74% members of parliament. Why are they not referring to the subsequent local government election at district and sub-county, which were held 1 week, 2 weeks, and 3 weeks subsequent to the main elections? Was intimidation only at presidential voting? Was violence only at presidential balloting, counting and tallying, declaration of results? No. But they seem to, what is making them angry is perhaps that their desired choice did not make it. Even this foolish call to, I call it foolish, even if this foolish call to call for a new election, even if it were to happen, in fact, the results would even be much higher for President Museveni and the NRM. I think first of all, the opposition has been bad-mouthing us for the last 35 years. Don't you remember when we had war in the north, they said we were committing genocide. You know that they have gone to ICC, they went to ICC. What did the ICC tell them? So this appears to be one of the kicks of a dying horse. This is not the first time either President Museveni or the NRM government has been maligned before the international community in the hope that the international community, so-called international community, holds sway on everything. The people of Uganda who know the truth have always prevailed and want to trust that even in the current circumstances, internal mistakes, internal weaknesses of governance in Uganda notwithstanding, majority of Ugandans know that governance in Uganda is qualitatively better than has ever been. And they also know that these mistakes are not official policy, they are not deliberate. That's why every other day they are willing to give the NRM and President Museveni the benefit of the doubt by re-electing it. Now, arguments have been made that we receive financial support. Aid is not charity. Aid is a business. When they lend Uganda money, Uganda pays back with interest. They create jobs for their people under so-called technical assistance. We buy equipment using that same loan from them, from their respective countries. So the donation, the aid, is mutually beneficial. And I can tell you, while we want to continue with bilateral and multilateral support from the European Union and their respective individual countries, Uganda can survive and will survive with or without aid, with or without donation, with or without financial support. When we started 35 years ago, the European Union was funding our election. Are they still funding our election? No. They were funding our civil service, including paying salaries, by the way. Are they still doing so? No. The first batch of High Court and Supreme Court judges, when the NRM came in, were hired by the British under the Commonwealth arrangement. Do they still pay salaries for our judicial officers? A big no. When we started the election in 1996, 2001, they have been paying for our ballot papers and paying election officials. These last two cycles of general election in Uganda were paid for 100% by the Uganda taxpayers. But even if they were giving aid as a charity, that shouldn't be ground for them to lecture us, especially when they are using double standard. Okay. In which country, in their own country, they're talking about civil society. They are the ones who brought the issues of money laundering from criminal gangs, from drug trafficking. If we arrest a person where we suspect he or she is involved in money laundering, why should that be an issue? But it is an issue because much of the money is coming from them to try and influence our domestic politics. Can any of the European countries allow an African country to fund a candidate in a political election? You have had them crying with Russia. You have had them crying with China. You have had them crying against Venezuela. Why should they think that it is okay for them to fund people for elections in Uganda, and it is not okay for Russia or for China to fund elections or to meddle in the internal election? Why do they think that Africa is a no man's land where everybody can come and do what they want? That time for Africa being a place for everyone and for no one is a long gone past. Africa, and Uganda in particular, has its owners who are the citizens. We shall have disputes. Some of them will be major disputes, but we believe NRM is building foundation for the ability to resolve our internal contestation. In any case, this particular dispensation of the new NRM, the new dispensation of stability and security, We never went to the UN, we never went to the EU. Into the contrary, when the country had fallen apart, all the EU countries closed their embassies and ran away from Amin. They closed their embassies and ran away from Obote too. We resolved the issues here by ourselves. After we have resolved, we created stability, they came back and they are doing viable business in Uganda. America has had the base, military base in Kenya for as long as I remember. In fact, it was recently because of terrorism that America has a long-standing treaty with Kenya to have a base in the Indian Ocean. And so to answer your question, what happens in the territory of Kenya should really be none of our concern. Kenya is free to give whomsoever they want a base. And is that the only base? No. Americans have bases all over the world. If you were thinking that that is to scare or to attack Uganda, they can attack Uganda, they can attack any part of the world, even from Europe. They don't need to have a base in Kenya. That base is for their own protection. Mainly, I think, fighting piracy in the seas and terrorism, especially flowing from the collapse of Somalia and Yemen. I don't think it has got anything to do with our domestic politics. But anyway, we can wait for it and see how that situation unfolds. But I don't think it has any relationship with what's going on. America has a lot of problems that I think they're rather sort of theirs, where a president incites an insurrection against his own government. I think that's a bigger problem for them to sort out than to try and tell Ugandans what to do.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay.